Hey there, tonight we're stepping into marble and misery, the ancient world's most polished prison. Welcome to Rome, not as an emperor, not as a senator, not even as a citizen, but as a slave. You're about to wake up in one of the city's grand patrician households, the kind you see in history books: mosaics, fountains, columns, the scent of olive oil and dust. But behind those polished marble walls is a life you wouldn't survive a single day in. Before we start, if you enjoy being transported into the forgotten corners of history, not the glamour, but the grit, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It tells me you're one of the few who enjoy learning what life really felt like. Now, take a deep breath. Feel the chill of dawn on your skin. Let's open our eyes together in ancient Rome. You wake up on the cold stone floor. It's not a bedroom, it's a storage room, half filled with amphorae of wine and oil. The air smells of vinegar, wet cloth, and the faint metallic tang of bronze lamps burning low. Your body aches from sleeping on straw that's turned sour from sweat. The thin blanket on you feels rough, like sandpaper. Somewhere outside this room, a rooster crows. That's your signal. Not for leisure, not for breakfast, but for work. Chains rattle when you move. They're not heavy enough to stop you from walking, just heavy enough to remind you who you are. Property, not a person, not even a servant. Property. A number on a wax tablet in your master's study. The door creaks open. Light floods in, golden and unforgiving. Another slave, older, stands in the doorway holding a clay oil lamp. "Get up," he mutters. His Latin is rough with a Greek accent. The mistress wants the atrium swept before sunrise. You rise, joints cracking, and follow him into the corridor. A cool tunnel lined with plaster walls painted in faded reds and yellows. The villa is waking up. You hear footsteps echoing on mosaic floors. Somewhere a girl is grinding grain between two stones. Someone else is drawing water from the courtyard cistern. The air smells of smoke from the kitchen hearth, burning olive wood. The sound of a bronze gate opening outside tells you the city is stirring too. Carts creaking, distant voices calling in the dawn fog. You shuffle barefoot across the mosaic floor of the atrium. It's beautiful. Tiny tiles of blue and gold forming a pattern of dolphins leaping over waves. You're careful not to step on the inlaid image of the household gods near the center. Even slaves avoid that. The older slave hands you a broom made of bundled twigs. You start sweeping, careful, slow, methodical. The sound echoes in the vast silence. The master and mistress aren't awake yet, but the house must look perfect before they rise. That's the rule, that's the fear. You glance upward at the open roof, the compluvium, where the sky shows a slice of pink dawn. Rainwater drips from last night's storm into the square pool below, the impluvium. You sweep the fallen petals of yesterday's offerings into a small clay tray. Each motion is quiet, almost reverent. You're not allowed to speak unless spoken to. You're not allowed to be seen unless needed. You're invisible until you make a mistake. Then you're unforgettable. Somewhere down the corridor, a whip cracks. Not hard, just a reminder. You freeze for half a second, then keep working. The older slave looks up. "Don't worry," he whispers. "They're only training the new kitchen boy." He says it like someone describing the weather, casual, inevitable. You don't ask questions. By sunrise, the house glows with life. Oil lamps are extinguished one by one. Curtains open to let in golden light. The mistress, draped in linen, crosses the atrium with her maid trailing behind, carrying her sandals. You kneel instantly, head down, broom pressed to the floor. She doesn't look at you. None of them ever do. When she's gone, the older slave nudges you. "Go help in the kitchen. You'll carry water today." You follow the smell of bread baking and onions sizzling in oil. The kitchen, the culina, is a low, smoky cave lined with blackened walls. The heat from the clay stove hits you like a wall. A dozen slaves move in rhythm, chopping, grinding, stirring, fetching. The cook, a large man with burn scars up his arms, shouts instructions in a mix of Latin and Greek. No one dares to answer back. You grab a bronze jug and head for the courtyard cistern. The rope burns your palms as you pull up a bucket of water. It's cold, heavy, clean. You carry it carefully back through the corridor. Spill any, and it's noticed. By mid-morning, the household is in full motion. The The master's sons are arguing in the study over a Latin lesson. A tutor's reed cane strikes the desk sharply to silence them. A slave girl polishes a marble statue of Apollo with wool soaked in olive oil. Another boy runs errands to the market. Someone else tends the small shrine to the household gods, muttering prayers as he lights a stick of incense. You, still hauling water, are sweating now. Your tunic clings to your back. The chain on your ankle bites with every step. Outside, the city hums. Vendors calling, chariots rattling on stone streets. But you'll never see that side of Rome, not freely. Your world is this house. Its corridors, its commands, its endless tasks. Lunch will come soon, not for you but for them. And when they eat, you serve. You carry trays into the triclinium, the dining room. It's dim and cool, walls painted with hunting scenes, fruit bowls, and mythic heroes. The master reclines on a couch, eating figs and bread dipped in honey. His guests speak softly, discussing politics, poetry, and gladiators. You stand behind them, silent as marble. When the master snaps his fingers, you pour wine. Not too fast, it must swirl gently. Not too slow, it must never run dry. A fly lands in the bowl. The mistress frowns. You freeze. Another slave steps forward instantly, removes the bowl, bows, and leaves. The master doesn't look at you, but you can feel the warning in the air. One mistake, and tomorrow you could be in chains somewhere worse. After the meal, leftovers are taken to the slaves' quarters. Bread crusts, fruit skins, a few spoonfuls of lentils, all scraped into a shared bowl. You eat quickly, crouched in a corner, before the afternoon chores begin. There's no talking about escape. You've seen what happens to those who try. A rumor whispers through the servants. One of the field slaves tried to flee last month. He didn't make it far. The master's steward had his name scratched off the wax tablet and replaced it with a new purchase. To Rome, he simply ceased to exist. You stare at the pyramid of light coming through the ceiling and wonder if the gods see you, or if even they look away. Afternoon heat fills the house. The marble floors grow warm beneath your bare feet. The cicadas outside drone like a single unbroken note. The mistress naps behind a silk curtain. The master meets a client in the atrium. You carry messages, refill lamps, wash dishes, sweep floors again. Every sound, every breath, has its rhythm. The older slave passes you once more, nodding slightly. "Don't get noticed," he whispers. "That's how you survive." But survival here doesn't mean living, it means existing quietly inside the will of others. You catch your reflection in a bronze tray. Sweat streaks your face, dust clings to your hair. You look like a shadow pretending to be human. Outside, the sun blazes white across Rome's rooftops. Inside, the air smells of heat and resignation. As evening falls, you light the household lamps again. The flame catches easily now. Your fingers practiced. Shadows dance on the frescoed walls. The fountain in the courtyard murmurs softly. The master's youngest child, a boy of 6, runs by laughing, dragging a carved wooden horse. He stops, looks at you and asks, "Do you sleep, too?" You nod. He frowns, puzzled, then runs off again. It's the first time someone in this house has spoken to you all day. When your tasks are done, you return to the storeroom. The air is cool again. You lie down on the straw, exhausted, staring up at the cracked plaster ceiling. Through a small high window, you see the stars, the same stars your master prays to, the same that shine on emperors and beggars alike. But for you, they're too far away to mean anything. You close your eyes. Somewhere above, the city drums on. Chariots rumbling, laughter from taverns, a distant dog barking. You think of home, though you barely remember it now. The language, the faces, the freedom, they've faded like the color on the wall. Tomorrow you'll wake again before dawn. Sweep, serve, obey. But tonight, for a moment, you let yourself dream, not of rebellion or revenge, but of silence, of what it might feel like to be human again. Morning arrives again with no beginning and no end. The sun over Rome has no mercy, but its first light through the villa's compluvium is gentle, pale gold sliding down plaster walls painted with myth. You rise when the older slave's whisper reaches you. No drum, no bell, just that soft time, The air smells of last night's embers and olive oil. Today you'll learn the house itself, the master's domus, a world of marble that orders every breath you take. It isn't just a home, it's a map of hierarchy carved in stone. You start in the vestibulum, the entrance corridor. Its floor is dark mosaic, its walls lined with painted hunting scenes. Every visitor who steps here sees Rome's power before seeing the people. 2 bronze masks hang near the door, faces of ancestors polished bright by generations of hands. You bow to them out of habit. Even gods made of metal deserve respect. Beyond is the atrium, the heart of the house, open to the sky. Rainwater from the roof trickles into the impluvium's marble pool, catching light that dances on the ceiling. The sound is constant, steady as breath. This space belongs to the master alone. You walk its edges, never its center. From the atrium stretch corridors leading to everything that matters. Each has a rule, though no one writes them down. The left hallway belongs to the men, offices, study, guest rooms. The right belongs to the mistress, spinning rooms, cosmetics, her private bath. Between them runs a current you can almost feel invisible, electric, dangerous. Step into the wrong one without permission, and you might not step out again. The older slave nods toward the master's tablinum, his study. Never enter unless called, he murmurs. You glance through the doorway anyway. Inside a desk of cedar, scrolls bound in leather, a bronze lamp shaped like a crouching lion, the smell of ink and beeswax. It feels sacred and sharp, a temple to control. The peristyle garden lies behind the house's public rooms, a rectangle of green inside stone walls. Slaves trim laurel hedges and sweep paths of crushed marble. Fountains whisper in shaded corners. Here the mistress walks at midday, her sandals leaving delicate half-moons in dust. Here, too, the household gods stand watch, small terracotta figures arranged beneath a portico, each with an offering bowl of grain. You're assigned to fetch water for the gardener. As you cross the colonnade, the heat already shimmers between columns. From somewhere nearby comes laughter, the master's children chasing a puppy through sunlight. For a moment you could almost call it beautiful, if beauty didn't cost so much pain to maintain. At the far end of the peristyle lies the triclinium, the grand dining room. The air smells of wine and polished wood. Marble couches line 3 sides of a table, inlaid with glass. On feast days you'll serve here, carrying dishes that gleam like treasure. For now it's empty, echoing softly. Sunlight filters through linen curtains, painting ripples on the mosaic floor, swans, grapes, and vines entwined in endless pattern. You touch the edge of the design when no one watches. The tiles are cool, smooth, precise. You wonder if the artist who made them was free or chained like you. Behind the triclinium stretches the culina, the kitchen and the storerooms stacked with amphorae. You've been here before, but today you see it differently, as the belly of a creature whose head is the master. Smoke stains crawl up the walls. Bronze pans hang from hooks. A baker beats dough against a board with rhythmic thuds. The smell of yeast mixes with garlic and burning oil. A boy your age turns a spit over the coals. He nods toward you, wordless acknowledgement. In this room no one talks of philosophy or empire, only of heat, of knives kept sharp, of fingers burned again and again until they learn the dance of survival. You move next through the servants' corridor, narrow and dim. It runs behind the public rooms, like a secret vein, built so slaves can pass unseen. Walls here are plain plaster, floor packed clay. Doors open onto the laundry, the lamp room, the tiny cubicles where indoor servants sleep, sitting up against barrels. The air smells of vinegar, soapwort, and sweat. A girl scrubs tunics in a wooden tub. Her hands are raw. Don't splash. The laundress warns her. The girl doesn't answer. You realize everyone here has learned silence as a second language. When the sun reaches its zenith, the master returns from the forum. The house shifts like a startled bird. Slaves rush to the entrance. Others scatter to polish, sweep, or kneel. You stand at the atrium's edge as he enters. A man in his 40s, toga bright as bone, sandals dusted from the street. 2 clients follow him, heads bowed. He doesn't see you, yet you feel seen. The silence in his wake is thick as incense. He walks toward the tablinum without a word. Only when the bronze door closes do people breathe again. The mistress appears soon after, carrying a small mirror of polished silver. Her hair glitters with pins shaped like leaves. She pauses at the impluvium, studies her reflection, and adjusts one curl. Then, softly, she says to her maid, "Bring me the boy who fetched water yesterday." You glance toward the older slave. He shakes his head quickly. "Not you. Another." Relief floods you, followed by guilt. In this house, being chosen is never simple fortune. The mistress walks on, her perfume trailing behind, a trace of myrrh and almond oil that fills the atrium long after she's gone. Afternoon light turns the plaster walls golden. The house quiets into its midday rhythm. You're ordered to carry folded linens to the upper floor. The staircase curves between painted panels of gods and heroes. Each step creaks faintly. Each shadow holds echoes. Upstairs the air is different, scented, still. You pass doorways half open. The mistress's chamber with its ivory bed, the nursery where the youngest child sleeps, a guest room with rolled mats and perfume jars. Even the silence feels expensive. You set the linens down and retreat backward, eyes lowered, the way you were taught. To turn your back would be insolence. Outside the city hums, the low thunder of carts on stone, the cry of a vendor selling figs. But inside the villa, time thickens. Light filters through lattice windows in dusty beams. Somewhere, a musician plucks a lyre. The notes drift through corridors like drifting petals. The older slave finds you again. "Come," he whispers. "You should know the back door." He leads you through another passage that ends at a heavy wooden gate, opening onto an alley. The air there smells of iron and waste. "If fire comes or soldiers search, this is where we run," he says. "Not out, just deeper." You nod, trying to memorize every turn. By late afternoon the domus feels alive, a pulse of footsteps, voices, orders. The master's clients depart, bowing as they pass the vestibule. The cook begins preparing for the evening meal, shouting for more oil. The household steward tallies grain with a wax tablet. You glimpse his marks, neat, merciless, every item accounted for, every person too. You realize the house isn't built for comfort. It's built for control. Every doorway frames authority. Every sound reminds you where you stand. The marble cool underfoot is the same marble that keeps you in place, a beauty that never forgets who polishes it. As the sun lowers, shadows lengthen along the colonnade. Lamps are lit again. The fountains in the garden turn copper-colored in dying light. A breeze carries the scent of rosemary and charcoal. For a heartbeat, the house seems almost peaceful. You stop by the impluvium and watch the last beam of sunlight shiver across its water. You wonder who will live here centuries from now, if anyone will still kneel on this floor, or if the roof will fall and the sky reclaim it. The thought feels dangerous, almost free. Night approaches. The household gathers for supper. The servants retreat to corridors. You return to your straw mat, body humming with exhaustion, mind tracing the house's plan like a map burned behind your eyes. You know every door now, every shortcut, every sound the marble makes underfoot. But knowledge here isn't freedom, it's survival. And survival, in a patrician house, is the quiet art of being unseen. The sound that wakes you isn't a voice or a bell, but the scrape of broom bristles on stone. Someone's already sweeping the corridor outside your cell. You open your eyes to grey half-light and the faint smell of ashes. Morning again, work again. There's no sense of beginning, only the moment between exhaustion and obedience. You stand, wrap the thin tunic tighter, and step into the narrow hall. The air is cool for now, holding the promise of heat later. In the distance, the kitchen fire coughs to life. You follow that glow because everything you do starts there. Inside the culinary, smoke curls up to the blackened ceiling. The cook is already shouting, voice rough from years of breathing charcoal dust. Faster with the dough, he calls. The master wants bread before the sun's full. You join the rhythm automatically. Stir, carry, fetch, repeat. The kitchen is a hive of motion, wooden spoons clattering, jars opening and closing, the hiss of water striking hot bronze. You grind barley with another servant, shoulders brushing, each turn of the stone mill slow and heavy. The smell of flour and sweat mixes until they're one thing. When the dough is ready, You knead it with the same steady pulse you'll use to polish bronze later. Every motion learned, every mistake remembered. By sunrise, heat has already filled the kitchen. You're sent to the courtyard cistern again. The rope creaks. The bucket rises dark and dripping, carrying it back through corridors. You move past painted walls you no longer see. They're beautiful, blue gods, winged victories, delicate vines, but beauty here belongs to someone else. At the kitchen doorway you pass two boys hauling amphorae. One slips, the other steadies him before the jar hits stone. They share a brief grin, wordless triumph at having avoided trouble. Then they keep walking. Moments of near disaster are the only sparks of life allowed. Mid-morning brings laundry duty. You and three others drag baskets of linens to the back terrace where the sun falls brightest. Soap wort, ashes and water turn into froth under your hands. The fabric smells of wine and perfume from the master's banquets. You scrub until your fingers wrinkle, then rinse each sheet in clean water carried from the cistern. Above you, the sky whitens. Steam rises from the cloth as it dries on the ropes. Someone hums softly a tune from nowhere. It isn't happy or sad. It's the sound of keeping time. The steward appears to inspect the work. He doesn't speak, he only touches a piece of linen between his fingers, nods once and leaves. The silence after he's gone is heavier than his presence. You shake the stiffness from your arms and return to scrubbing. When the laundry's done, another slave hands you a basket of metal lamps. Polish, she says. Before dusk, each lamp bears soot and fingerprints. You sit cross-legged in the shade and begin rubbing with cloth and oil until dull bronze turns liquid bright. In their curves you see tiny warped reflections of yourself, one face repeated endlessly, each more distorted than the last. At noon the cook calls for help again. You carry trays through corridors where marble cools your bare feet. The master's children chase each other past, laughing, throwing figs. One hits your shoulder and bursts. Juice runs down your arm. The older boy snickers, then forgets you exist. You wipe the sticky mark with your sleeve and keep walking. In the dining room, the mistress inspects the dishes before they go out. Her voice is quiet but edged with steel. She adjusts a plate by the width of a finger, then gestures for you to take it away. A whole morning's labor measured and dismissed in that tiny movement. When the family eats, you stand behind them. Conversation drifts around you. Debate about politics, rumors from the forum, praise for a poet. The smell of roast fish makes your stomach clench, but you've learned to ignore it. You pour wine, replace bowls, retreat a step. Invisible choreography. The mistress's youngest drops a slice of bread. You pick it up before it touches the floor, bow and back away. She doesn't look at you. When the meal ends, the leftovers go to the servant's room again. You'll eat later, if anything remains. Afternoon is errands. The steward sends you into the city with a coin and a list scratched on wax. Olive oil, lamp wicks, a jar of garum. The street outside the gate is another world, sun blazing off white walls, vendors shouting in accents from every province. You walk quickly, eyes down. Even in chains you must look invisible among citizens. At the oil merchant's stall you wait while free women bargain beside you. They smell of perfume and ease. The merchant doesn't meet your eyes when he takes the coin. You carry the goods back through crowds that part automatically, as if the brand on your wrist burns light they can see. Back inside the domus the air feels thick and still. After the noise outside, you deliver the basket, then are sent to help in the baths. The balneum is smaller than public ones, but built from the same rhythm of heat and water. Steam clouds the ceiling. Copper basins gleam in lamplight. You stoke the furnace, feed logs through a low arch, and feel the fire's breath on your skin. When the master enters later to bathe, you retreat behind a pillar. Only attendants chosen for that duty may approach him. You wait until the hiss of water fades, then clean the floor, your hands pruning in the warm puddles left behind. Mid-afternoon light filters through high slits, turning steam to gold. You move quietly, almost floating from habit. The house settles into its slow heartbeat again. Laundry folded, bread baked, accounts tallied. The constant labor doesn't feel like punishment anymore. It feels like weather. Something that happens to you, not because of you. Still, every joint aches. You stretch your hands once, See the network of tiny cuts from rope and pottery. They sting, but they're proof you exist, more real than the name you lost when they bought you. You're called to polish marble in the atrium. The floor's mosaic, dolphins again, blue and gold, gleams faintly under the layer of dust. You kneel with cloth and vinegar, rubbing in circles. Each ring clears a patch of light until the pattern returns. Waves, fish, fragments of myth. The smell of vinegar mixes with the scent of myrrh from the household altar. As you work, footsteps pass. The tutor leads the master's sons to lessons, scrolls under arm. Their laughter fades up the corridor. You keep polishing until you can see the reflection of the ceilings opening, just a square of sky floating in stone. When the lamps are trimmed for evening, you finally eat. Bread, olives, a handful of lentils left from the kitchen. You sit on a step with others, too tired for talk. Someone murmurs a line from a Greek poem about the sea. No one understands it fully, but the rhythm feels like rest. The older slave shares water from a clay jug. You'll get used to it, he says. You don't ask what it is. The word could mean the work, the silence, or the idea that time belongs to someone else. Dusk. The family dines again, and music drifts through the corridors. Flute, drum, soft laughter. You and a few others clear the outer court, sweep petals from the shrine, feed scraps to the dog chained near the gate. The air cools at last. The scent of baked bread lingers faintly sweet. From the street, you hear a storyteller's voice, a fragment of myth about Hercules. The sound carries over the walls, reminding you that somewhere beyond them people choose their own stories. Here, stories are told only to pass the hours between orders. As night thickens, the house dims one lamp at a time. You store tools, rinse the cloths, close the shutters of the kitchen. The cook yawns, gestures for you to rake the ashes. You spread them over the embers until the glow fades to faint red. The quiet afterward feels enormous. You step into the courtyard. The impluvium mirrors a single star. A breeze moves through the columns, rustling olive leaves. The day's heat lifts away in layers. You breathe once, deeply, almost freely, before the chain on your ankle reminds you it's time to go back inside. In your corner of the storeroom, you curl onto the straw. Your muscles tremble from habit more than pain. Beyond the wall, the city never sleeps. Vendors, drunks, soldiers, life continuing. Inside, only breathing and the creak of wood settling. Tomorrow will be the same dust, the same fire, the same rhythm of hands that build a world for others. But for now, the silence is yours, and that small, quiet ownership feels almost like freedom. The morning begins with silence sharper than any shout. You wake before the bell, because in this house, no one dares to let the bell wake them first. The still air of the corridor feels like the breath before a storm. A footstep, a cough, a wrong sound could draw attention, and attention here is dangerous. You rise quietly, roll the blanket, and glance toward the door. The steward's shadow crosses the hall. He's early today. That means inspection. You smooth your tunic and wait. He passes, eyes like polished coins. He doesn't stop. You've survived the first test of the day, invisibility. In the culina, the cook's tone is clipped, brisk. No mistakes today, he mutters. The master's guests are senators. You nod. Everyone nods. The tension seeps into your bones. Even the pots seem to clatter more quietly. You knead dough, careful not to spill flour on the floor, every grain a possible accusation of waste. When the oven door groans, you wince, praying it won't draw eyes. The smell of rising bread should feel comforting, but it doesn't. It feels like proof that you're doing your job, proof that you belong here, at least for another hour. Later in the courtyard, the steward calls names from a wax tablet. Each person steps forward, recites their duty, waits for the nod. His tone never rises. True discipline doesn't need to shout. One servant stumbles on her Latin, a single word wrong, and the silence that follows is heavier than noise. She's sent away toward the storeroom, pale as the plaster walls. No one looks after her. You keep your gaze low, the way you've learned to survive. See everything, show nothing. You're sent to polish the family shrine. The rararium sits in the corner of the atrium, where smoke from incense curls like memory. You wipe the small bronze figures of household gods, careful not to drop them. A tiny chip of ash lands on your wrist. You let it burn rather than risk smearing the shine. Behind you, the steward's steps echo once, twice, then fade. He's always watching, or maybe it just feels that way. Fear here isn't a man, it's the air. The mistress glides into the peristyle, her sandals whispering on marble. Wine stains, she says, pointing to a patch on a cushion. You bow, though you weren't the one who spilled it. I'll see to it, Domina. She nods, not approval, not kindness, just acknowledgement that you understood the command. You take the cushion to the fountain, scrubbing until your hands sting from cold water. Each motion deliberate, each movement a small prayer. Around here, faith isn't in gods, it's in precision. Midday heat swells in the courtyard. The scent of thyme drifts from the garden, but you barely smell it. The steward's rounds continue. You hear him questioning two stable boys. The tone is calm, but his calm is worse than anger. One of the boys protests. Softly, uncertainly. That's his mistake. The steward cuts him off with a single word. Enough. The conversation ends like a door closing. You keep sweeping the mosaic path, eyes down, listening to the rustle of leaves as if they could drown the sound of fear. Discipline here isn't about punishment. It's about rhythm, a system so tight that every breath fits inside it. You learn to anticipate footsteps, to read a sigh, to hear the warning in the way a spoon touches a bowl. When the master's voice calls across the atrium, you react before you understand the words. You've trained yourself to move at the sound of command, not meaning. It's faster that way. Safer. In the kitchen, someone drops a cup, bronze hitting stone. The sound is small but feels enormous. You freeze. Everyone freezes. The cook turns slowly, eyes narrowing, and the culprit bows, whispering apology after apology. The cook says nothing. He picks up the broken cup, places it on the counter, and keeps working. No one breathes until he's gone. Fear doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just lingers like smoke after the fire's gone out. Later, while delivering wine, you pass through the atrium again. The master stands at the far end, surrounded by guests. You walk along the edge of the mosaic, careful not to cross the center. That space belongs to them. You pour without spilling, step back without turning your back fully, every motion memorized. The trick isn't to disappear, it's to be present without weight, movement without sound. You're not a person here. You're part of the furniture that happens to breathe. Afternoon light cuts through the lattice windows, drawing lines across the floor, bars of gold and shadow. You polish silver plates by that light, each one reflecting fragments of the room. In every reflection, you're bent, distorted, smaller. Outside, a storm gathers. You hear thunder roll beyond the city walls, faint but steady. You envy it. Thunder can be loud. You can't. When rain begins, you rush to close the shutters. The mistress dislikes drafts. The sudden cool wind lifts the curtains, scattering petals from a vase. You catch them mid-air, trembling. None must touch the floor. You succeed. Barely. She glances up once from her embroidery. A single nod. Approval is rare. Precious not because it means kindness, but because it means safety. You breathe again. By evening the storm passes. The air smells of wet marble and oil lamps. You carry a tray of fruit through the corridor, steady despite exhaustion. Voices echo from the triclinium. Laughter, wine pouring. The world of the powerful continuing as if the rain never happened. You pause near the servants' passage. The steward's voice murmurs nearby, giving orders about tomorrow's schedule. You memorize every word automatically. In a house like this, survival depends on knowing what will be wanted before it's spoken. Later you clean the lamps again. The oil on your hands shines like liquid gold. For a moment you let your gaze rest on the flame. Small, bright, fragile. You think about how it's fed. Air, oil, discipline. Without one, the light dies. That's what you've become. A living flame, fueled by obedience. If you flicker too bright, someone cups their hand and smothers you back into shape. You don't hate them for it. Hate would take energy, and energy is rationed like everything else. When night finally settles, the house breathes slower. You return to your corner. The walls hold the day's heat. The air still smells of smoke and lavender. Through a narrow window the moon rests against the tiles. You close your eyes, but even in sleep you listen, for footsteps, for whispers, for danger that never fully leaves. In your dream you're walking through a field without walls. You keep expecting someone to call your name, but no one does. It's quiet. Too quiet. You wake before dawn, heart steady but hollow. Another day is waiting, identical in shape and weight. Discipline isn't just what they demand. It's what keeps you from breaking. The house wakes slowly, not with orders this time, but with whispers. The air smells of oil and incense, clean, rich, and ancient. It's the first day of the month, and that means ritual. The mistress believes it keeps misfortune away, that the gods see every floor swept, every lamp lit. To her, it's religion. To you, it's another kind of labor, one wrapped in smoke and reverence. You rise before dawn, wash your hands in the courtyard fountain, and wait by the household shrine, the lararium. The water chills your skin, tracing lines of fatigue and faith both. Somewhere, the cook's fire sparks. The city murmurs beyond the walls, but in this courtyard the air holds still, as if even the wind respects the gods. The lararium glows faintly in the corner of the atrium, its small alcove painted with curling vines and doves. Inside stand the household gods, the larares, two bronze figures, no higher than your hand, arms raised in eternal dance. Between them sits a miniature altar, a stone slab darkened from years of smoke. Beside it, a bowl of salt, a lamp of olive oil, a sprig of laurel. The mistress enters first, draped in a white shawl. You lower your head as she steps forward, carrying a clay dish filled with incense. Her maid follows, holding a silver spoon. You stay kneeling at the edge, ready to catch ash before it stains the marble. The ritual begins in near silence. The mistress sprinkles salt into the flame, whispering Latin words older than the Republic itself. The smoke curls upward, blue against the painted wall. Then she pours a few drops of wine into the bowl, an offering to the penates, guardians of the home's food and hearth. You've watched her perform this ritual dozens of times, but today something feels different. Maybe it's the way the light moves through the compluvium, soft and golden, striking the bronze faces of the gods. They look almost alive, dancing shadows on the wall, graceful and cold. Your part comes next. You step forward, carrying a small basket of offerings, bread crusts, dates, and a pinch of barley flour. You place them carefully in a wooden bowl at the foot of the shrine. Your hands tremble, not from belief, but from the weight of being seen. For a few breaths you stand where only the mistress and the priest should stand. You hear her say softly, "Even the lowly must serve the sacred." It's not unkind, not mocking, just true in her world. The gods belong to the masters, but you're the one who feeds them. When the ceremony ends, she leaves without a word. You stay behind to clean the ashes, wipe the smoke from the wall, refill the lamp. The air hums faintly with burnt incense and olive oil. You polish the bronze figurines until your reflection trembles in their surface. Their faces don't change, smiling, serene, unblinking. You wonder if that's what eternity looks like. Not peace, but permanence. You envy them for never tiring, never feeling hunger, never fearing punishment. Yet even the gods depend on you to stand, bow, and light their flame. Later in the kitchen you hear the cook mutter a prayer of his own. He spills a drop of wine on the floor and touches it with his finger. For the Laras, he says. Even he, gruff and scarred, believes a small offering might buy luck. You mimic him quietly, tracing a circle in spilled water. It feels foolish and real at the same time. Faith here isn't optional. It soaks into the day the way smoke clings to clothes. Even if you stopped believing, the motions would remain. Bow, pour, whisper, repeat. By midday the atrium fills with sunlight. The shrine gleams like polished amber. Visitors pass through, lowering their heads automatically. No one questions the ritual. No one dares to ignore it. Religion isn't just devotion. It's etiquette, the architecture of order. The master arrives home from the forum, removing his sandals at the threshold. Before entering, he raises a hand toward the laris, a gesture older than his name. He murmurs something you can't hear. Then he steps past you, and life continues. Messages delivered, meals prepared, scrolls read aloud. The gods have been fed. The household machine keeps turning. The older slave finds you later by the garden. He carries a clay lamp with a cracked base. For the gods' fire, he says. You mend it with wax and twine, then test the wick. When it burns steady, you feel oddly proud. The flame you keep alive for them is the same one that lights the hallways at night. Worship and work, indistinguishable. He sits beside you on the stone step. You think they listen? He asks. You shrug. If they don't, they still eat. He laughs quietly. The first sound of joy you've heard all day. Then they're Romans too. In the evening, a small procession passes through the atrium. The mistress carries a bowl of milk and honey. The children hold flowers. The scent fills the air, sweet and heavy. They place offerings before the lares, then scatter petals around the impluvium. You sweep behind them later, careful not to brush too near the altar. The youngest child turns to you and whispers, "Do your gods look like ours?" You start to answer, but the older sister hushes him. You smile faintly. Sometimes you say, "When no one's watching." When night falls, the household lamps are lit from the shrine's flame, one wick touching another, until the whole villa glows. You carry your lamp through the corridor, shielding it from the draught. Shadows climb the frescoed walls, turning painted gods into living ones. You pause at the servant quarters and set the lamp down. The light pulls gently around the sleeping faces of others. They look peaceful, almost holy in the glow. For a moment you imagine the lares walking these halls in silence, inspecting their domain of marble, dust and breath. Outside, thunder murmurs again. The second storm in as many nights. You hurry to close the shutters. The mistress says lightning angers Jupiter, that prayers keep him from striking. You wonder if prayers work on storms of a different kind. Hunger, exhaustion, fear. The rain begins to fall, soft and rhythmic. You whisper one word to the night. Not a plea, not a name, just a breath of sound. Maybe that's enough. Maybe all prayers start as whispers of fatigue. Later, the master hosts a small dinner for his friends. The talk drifts from politics to omens. A comet seen over the harbour, an eclipse that frightened the city dogs. Each man offers an opinion. Each servant listens silently. Superstition fills the air like incense, invisible but thick. When the meal ends, the guests each touch the shrine before leaving, fingers brushing bronze for luck. You follow after them, clearing the floor, collecting crumbs, relighting the lamp that almost went out. Even the ashes here have a purpose. Before bed, you return once more to the lararium. The flames flicker low now. Tired like you replace the oil, straighten the small bowl, wipe stray ash from the floor. Your reflection shimmers faintly in the bronze god's face, blurred but present. You think of all the people who've knelt here before you, masters, servants, children, each believing they kept order in the world by feeding invisible mouths. Maybe that's what Rome itself is built on. The idea that if everyone performs their ritual perfectly, the sky will keep its stars and the ground will stay firm. You snuff the lamp and step back. Darkness folds around you like fabric. The gods' faces vanish, but their shapes linger behind your eyelids, small, eternal, unchanging. As you walk back through the corridor, you touch the wall once, leaving a faint mark of soot from your fingers. It feels like proof you existed, if only for a moment, inside their endless light. Night is when the house loosens its grip. Not much, just enough for the air to move differently through the corridors, for whispers to survive a little longer before they fall apart. The lamps are dim, the marble cool again. Somewhere a dog turns in its sleep and sighs. You lie on your straw listening to the wood settle and the rain gutters talk. The thought returns, the one you always chase away during daylight. What would it take to walk beyond the gate and keep walking? You know better than to hold that thought too long. It burns. In Rome, even ideas leave a brand. Still, you let it rest in your chest for one slow breath. Then the older slave's shadow appears in the doorway, and his voice is a thread. Come quietly. He leads you through the servants' corridor, past closed shutters and stacked amphorae. to the back gate that stares into a narrow alley. Not out, never out, just deeper, as he taught you. You don't step into the street, you slip into a storage shed that shares a wall with the domus. 3 others already sit inside on upturned baskets, faces lit by a single guarded flame. The door closes. The flame seems to breathe with all of you. No names, no speeches, only the simple economy of trust. Today the baker's boy speaks. They're talking in the Sabora. A foreman at the mills took his peculium and vanished. A spark, then silence, as if the very jars are listening. Peculium. The word rolls like a coin in the mouth. The tiny savings a master sometimes lets a slave keep. Not kindness, but leverage. You've heard of men buying their freedom with it, after years of small, quiet refusals, saving a fig instead of eating it, mending a sandal rather than asking for a new one, selling a trinket on a street corner under the eye of an indifferent guard. The foreman knew the watch schedule. The boy whispers. Left at dawn while the bells were ringing for market. Took the north road, they say. The older slave's eyes stay on the flame. If he left, the room nods the way people nod at a grave you can't see. Word travels differently among the unfree. It moves along damp laundry ropes and under wagon axles on the backs of market tokens and in the catches of simple songs. Some news arrives bright, coated in hope. Some arrives already ash. A woman from the laundry speaks next. At the docks a collar was found, bronze. It said, "Hold me, I belong to Marcus so-and-so." Her mouth tightens. Empty. The older slave's hands rest on his knees, open, unthreatening. Empty is better than filled, he says, and no one disagrees. They do not use the word rebellion. The city has laws for words like that. Instead, there are other words. Weather, sickness, bad bread. If someone has run, they say he took the long road. If a supervisor has disappeared, they say the river kept him. If a warehouse burned, they say the moon was careless. You learn the vocabulary of survival, the way you learn to carry a jar without spilling through the weight of repetition. Tonight the talk is not of fire, it's of threads and knots and maps you wear on your skin. A scar that marks the turn at the olive grove, 3 dots on the forearm to mean 3rd milestone. The older slave has a bead of bone on a string. He touches it. When I left the hills, he says, my mother told me, remember the cold in your hands. That is where the road begins. You imagine a hill, a mother, cold. The flame flickers, and the memory isn't yours, but it fills your lungs anyway. Days are quieter after nights like this. You return to the machine, water jars, and fires and sweeping and wine, and the machine accepts you, unchanged. Fear here isn't a shout. It's a well-made door that opens and closes on time. Still, you notice new currents. The steward watches longer. The dog is moved nearer the gate. At breakfast, the tithe of bread is weighed twice. In the triclinium, the master's friends speak of a rumour from the south. A band of workers along the Appian road refusing to return to the estate after harvest. They call it folly. They call it youth. They call it many things, but never cause. One laughs and says, they think Spartacus will return. The others make the sign Romans make when they joke about thunder. Someone refills a cup. You carry on. The name hangs in the air long after the men have forgotten it. You heard it before in a different house, under a different moon. Spartacus, the man who turned a school for gladiators into a moving country. It was years ago, before your time here, before you had learned the villa's heartbeat. Old women still half whisper his story like a weather pattern. He rose like a storm, and Rome turned the sky to iron to stop him. You do not say his name. Names are doors. You picture instead a hand on a rope, a foot on a road, and a hill that is not yet watched by anyone. At market, the city feels closer to the ground than usual. You move through the narrow streets with your basket and your list, and the Subura hums, a hive of dialects and smoke, sandals and iron. A cutler sharpens blades in a shower of sparks. A woman sells cheap perfume out of tiny glazed bottles. A boy your age kisses his girl behind a stall while she laughs against his palm. Everything seems so available to other people. The choice to stop, to talk, to touch the morning. You keep your eyes on the coin and the olives you must buy. Still, you hear it. A snatch of tune some men hum while unloading grain. It's nothing. just 4 notes rising like a question. But the same 4 notes meet you at another corner, in a different set of mouths. You pause to adjust your strap and listen. The notes are the shape of a path. Signals in Rome are often hiding in the very order they mimic. The baker's marks on loaves, circles, crosses, lines tell one story to buyers, and another to those who can read the intervals. The way laundry is hung 2 lengths of cloth, then a space, then one says Saturday to a mistress, and second mile to a woman who wants to know. Even spills carry meaning, a splash of watered wine on a doorstep to say tonight, a chalk line on a post to say no. You test none of the signs. You pass through them like a fish through reeds, yet your body remembers. It stores each pattern in a quiet drawer, knowing that one day a pattern might be the only map you're allowed to carry. Back at the house, the older slave hands you a lamp and says softly, "In the baths tonight." He does not explain. He doesn't need to. The private balneum is usually the most supervised place you know. Steam keeps secrets, but also reveals silhouettes. Yet with a storm rolling in, the winds from the hypoxed moan enough to cover murmurs. After sundown you carry towels as if it were an ordinary task. 2 others pass in and out with baskets and oil. The furnace breathes. Water whispers against stone. Under the hiss, a voice. 2 nights from now, before first light, grain gate. Someone coughs in the next room. A felpo busibita. Silence moves back in, soft, souled, and unhurried. You lie awake. The plan, if it can be called a plan, is only a direction. The North Road. The grain gate. Dawn. You count your steps between the servant's door and the alley. You time the changing of the watch by the dog's soft whine and the steward's circuit. You test your breath. Too fast. Too loud. Too much of you in the room. The stars outside the slit window look like the heads of nails hammered into a black board. The older slave does not tell you to come. He does not tell you to stay. He simply says, "I will see you when I see you," and rolls over. In the silence that follows, you can hear the whole city rehearsing the next day. Ropes, carts, sandals. The river's mouthful of moonlight. The next day is ordinary on purpose. You move slower, not from hesitation but from obedience. You polish the lamps until they catch themselves, a self-contained galaxy of light. You sweep the corridor twice. You refill the fountain's basin so carefully that not a drop rings against the marble. When the mistress's child drops a cup, you bend and set it upright before it falls. Your body becomes the shape of caution. In the triclinium, the master tells a funny story about a runaway who hid in a cart of cabbages and was discovered because he started laughing. The guests laugh properly. You pour wine properly. The story lays its soft weight over the room like a blanket stitched with warning. Laughter is a luxury. Breath is work. The night before the attempt arrives with an odd clarity. The air tastes like iron and rain. You can feel your heart in your ankles, in the notch of your collarbone, in the soft place behind your ears. You count the lamps that must be lit. You count the ones that must be left dark. You fold your tunic and unfold it, and fold it again. You tell your hands to stop telling on you. Before you sleep, if it can be called sleep, you take the bone bead the older slave once showed and roll it between your fingers. You have nothing else to carry. When you finally dream, it is not of roads or gates. It is of water, wide and black and patient. Morning arrives too soon to be called morning. The sky is the color of the inside of a shell. The dog does not bark. He's been moved to the other side of the garden. The steward's step ticks past like a careful clock and fades. You rise without rustling the straw. The corridor is empty, but feels occupied by the expectation of footsteps. At the back door, a breath. Another. A third. Not yours. The others are there, as planned, as hoped, as feared. A presence less than a group and more than a rumor. No words. The latch lifts. The door becomes a dark mouth. You step toward it and stop, not because you doubt the road's existence, but because you know the house is also a road, a loop that pulls you back, hour after hour, to feed its lamps and polish its gods. You hold the bone bead once hard until it warms. Then you do the bravest thing you can do in a city built on victory. You listen, not for guards, not for dogs, not for fate, for yourself. The small steady engine of breath that you keep giving to other people. You count to 10. You step back. The door closes with the soft sound a hand makes when it releases a shoulder. The others do not blame you. They understand the arithmetic of fear. In Rome, survival is not a single act. It is a practice. Some mornings the practice is running. Some mornings it is staying. Today you choose to live long enough to choose again. The morning of the games begins earlier than most. The house moves with the quiet precision of ceremony. Sandals shuffling on marble fabric, whispering across polished floors. You wake to the sound of carts outside, thick wooden wheels rolling toward the forum carrying baskets of fruit, amphorae of wine, cages covered with linen. The mistress's maid murmurs that it is a holiday, a day for spectacle. To the masters it is a feast for the eyes. To the slaves it is a new kind of labor. You will walk with them, carry water, fan away flies, hold cloaks when the sun grows fierce. But still, it is a change of walls, and for a moment that almost feels like freedom. You pass through the streets of Rome as dawn grows, honey-colored over the rooftops. Crowds thicken near the Circus Maximus. Merchants shout, children weave between sandals. The smell of roasted grain and hot metal mingles with river wind. The family walks ahead in a cluster of fine linen and perfume, the steward at their shoulder. You follow with others from the house, baskets balanced, eyes lowered. The sound of the city grows enormous, rolling like a sea. People come not just from the capital but from towns you've never seen. Men with desert dust in their hair, women with northern braids, soldiers gleaming like statues. Rome gathers itself like a storm. At the gate to the amphitheater, your master's seal is recognized. Guards nod, letting him pass into the shaded corridor that leads to his tier. You follow through a passage of stone that breathes cold air from beneath the seats. It smells of damp rock, oil, and anticipation. When you emerge into light, the sound hits you first. A human roar shaped into rhythm. Tens of thousands of voices fold and unfold. Above, awnings stretch like sails, striped in red and white, trembling with wind. Below, the sand of the arena glows pale as bone. You think this is what the sky must sound like when the gods argue. You settle behind your mistress's couch, holding a bronze fan. Around you the world glitters, senators in purple-trimmed togas, vestal virgins veiled like statues. Even the air feels choreographed, carrying the scents of saffron and sweat. In the arena, workers rake the sand into perfect symmetry. Trumpets sound, the crowd swells and then falls silent, an entire city obeying one breath. The magistrate raises his hand, gold ring catching the sun, and releases the first contest of the morning. No blood yet, just the parade, banners, musicians, costumed performers. Theatre before theatre, even this feels rehearsed by centuries. The mistress leans toward a neighbor, whispering gossip, masked as piety. You fan her slowly, feeling the pulse of heat that rises from the crowd. Each time the drums strike, the wooden benches tremble under your feet. Far below, acrobats balance on poles, their shadows rippling across the sand. Children clap, merchants hawk honey cakes. From your corner of shade, the noise feels almost holy, like a mass devoted to motion. You realize the masters come not to see danger, but to see themselves reflected in control. Thousands responding as one to a gesture, a signal, a sound. A shout ripples through the crowd. The emperor's envoy has arrived. The people rise like wheat before wind. Trumpets flare again, bright and merciless. You bow with the others. The envoy lifts his arm, nods once, and sits. The games begin in earnest. Teams of horses thunder from the gates, manes foaming, wheels shrieking. The charioteers lean into their turns, tunics snapping like banners. The crowd chants colors, reds, blues, greens, until the words blur into a single rolling heartbeat. The sand lifts in golden clouds. When it settles, one team leads by a span of reins, and the noise breaks apart into applause, laughter, argument. It's not victory they crave, it's participation in power. The mistress offers you a sip of watered wine, mercy disguised as etiquette. You take it carefully. The liquid tastes of iron and heat. The steward murmurs about odds and wagers. Even the most pious men cannot resist gambling. Below, attendants, sweep the track, collecting debris. In every gesture, cleaning, cheering, counting. You see the machinery of Rome itself, endless repetition polished into devotion. One of the household's younger slaves leans toward you. Have you ever been inside the arena? He whispers. You shake your head. No one walks there twice, he says, smiling without humor. By midday, sunlight slants through the canopy, striping faces with gold and shadow. Musicians rest their horns and fruit sellers climb the stairs with baskets. The mistress buys figs. You wipe the juice from her fingers. Your hand smells of sweetness for hours. You look across the tiers, thousands of people layered like the city itself, rich above, poor below, slaves between. The amphitheater becomes a mirror of hierarchy. Every seat a rung in a ladder no one can climb. Then, as if to remind everyone of the ladder's base, animals are led in from the far gates, decorative, exotic, controlled, not for combat, today but for awe. The crowd gasps, as if creation itself had entered on command. A leopard paces the sand, tethered with gold chain. A handler feeds it morsels from a bronze dish. The creature's muscles flow under its coat like smoke. It turns once, gazes at the stands, and you feel an echo deep in your chest. Something wild recognizing something trapped. Children shout. Petals rain from the upper tiers. The scent of myrrh and dust thickens. Somewhere, a horn sounds wrong, and for a heartbeat the illusion falters. One raw note revealing the human beneath the spectacle. Then the drums reclaim rhythm, and the world slides back into order. Afternoon stretches long and bright. You're sent with other servants to fetch water from the cistern beneath the stands. The tunnels below are cool, echoing, alive with murmurs. Light from grated openings cuts stripes across the floor. In one of those slivers stands a man in chains. Not a spectacle, just a laborer who cleans between shows. He nods at you, expression calm, neither pitying nor pitied. You nod back. For a moment rank dissolves into recognition. Then the steward's voice calls, and you climb back toward the roar above. The sky shifts color, from gold to white, from white to rose. The final races end in dust and acclaim. The envoy rises, gives the closing salute, and the crowd responds with a sound so vast it seems to lift the awnings. All of Rome exhaling at once. You think the empire does not need chains when it can teach people to cheer. Control here is joy harnessed to rhythm. Even the poorest shout the names of their favorites, convinced they are part of something grand, and maybe they are. Maybe belief is the strongest architecture Rome ever built. When it is over, petals and dust coat the air like smoke. The mistress rises, graceful even in fatigue. A fine day, she says. You gather her cloak and follow her into the slow river of people flowing toward the exits. In the corridor, torchlight flickers across mosaics of past victories, chariots frozen mid-race, gods handing crowns to mortals. You notice how the tesserae catch the firelight, each small stone a fragment of belief. If you stare long enough, they seem to move again. Motion without freedom, Rome's favorite art. Outside, the city glows with evening dust. Vendors sweep coin piles into sacks. Performers fold their costumes. The sky above the Tiber burns orange, reflecting off the temple roofs. The crowd disperses into stories, each person retelling what they saw, each memory already rewritten by pride. You follow the family home through streets that smell of sweat, roses, and wine. A flute somewhere plays the same 4 notes you heard once in the Subura. You don't turn your head, but your heart remembers. Not rebellion, just echo. Back at the villa, the mistress orders a bath. You heat water, add herbs, fold towels. Steam softens the air. They say the emperor himself will appear next time, she muses. You answer only with a polite hum. When she is gone, you stand by the impluvium and look at your reflection in its dark water. The noise of the day still hums behind your ears, an afterimage of the crowd. You realize that even silence now sounds like thousands breathing together. Later, servants gather near the kitchen to eat leftovers from the games, fruit skins, crusts, half-empty cups. Someone imitates the herald's booming voice. Laughter ripples through the group. You join in softly, but beneath the mirth sits weariness older than Rome itself. The older slave says, "You see, They feed us stories the way they feed lions, just enough to keep us pacing. No one answers. In the lamplight, his eyes shine not with rebellion but understanding. Knowing itself is dangerous, yet strangely liberating. When the others drift to sleep, you walk once more through the atrium. The household gods watch from their alcove, flames small but steady. You light one more lamp, feeding the flame with a breath you cannot quite call prayer. The noise of the games feels distant now, as if you dreamed it. Yet something lingers, the rhythm, the unity, the lesson that joy can be a leash, if repeated often enough. Rome doesn't fear rebellion, it fears silence. So you practice the rarest skill of all, quiet. Midnight, outside the city glows with the scattered light of 1,000 hearths. Somewhere, revelers still sing, half drunk, half holy. The same moon that shone over the arena now shines through the compluvium, turning water silver. You sit beside the pool, fingers tracing ripples. The reflection breaks and reforms the way crowds do after every spectacle, dispersed then gathered again by habit. The empire breathes through them and through you. It is both master and mirror. In the servants' hall someone dreams aloud, words half-formed, laughter slipping from sleep. You smile. Even in captivity, dreams leak out like smoke through cracks. You wonder what Rome will dream centuries from now when these stones are dust. Will it still crave spectacle? Still build arenas inside its heart? The answer hums in your chest. Yes, people always gather to forget themselves for a while. Perhaps that is why no empire truly dies. It simply changes costumes. You step outside into the garden. Crickets pulse, torches sputter. The air smells of damp laurel. Overhead, constellations sprawl, ancient, indifferent, perfectly arranged. Somewhere, a star falls, tracing a brief golden arc. You think of chariots again, racing across the sky. For the first time all day, the sound of applause has faded completely. What remains is heartbeat, breath, the whisper of leaves. The quieter Rome becomes, the more alive it feels. You linger by the wall where ivy climbs toward the roof. From here you can see the faint outline of the amphitheater against the night horizon, its arches glowing like hollow ribs. It looks both eternal and fragile, a monument to how noise can outlive meaning. You wonder if tomorrow's games will be remembered, or if they'll vanish like smoke. Perhaps memory, like empire, survives only through those forced to carry it silently. Back inside, you extinguish the lamps one by one. Each flame folds in on itself, leaving a thin trail of scent. The air cools, heavy with quiet. You can almost hear the city resting, gathering breath for the next spectacle. The household gods watch from the dark. You bow once, not to them but to endurance itself. It is the only god that has never failed you. You lie down, closing your eyes. Behind them the arena rises again, not the noise but the moment before it, when thousands waited for signal. That waiting, that suspended breath, is Rome. You are part of it, unwillingly, but indelibly. Tomorrow you will sweep marble, polish bronze, and prepare for another feast. The games will repeat, different faces, same music, and yet deep beneath the layers of sand and song, you carry something unspoken, the knowledge of silence, the seed of thought that might one day grow into choice. For now you sleep. The empire dreams with you, vast and restless. Morning comes grey and thin. The air inside the villa feels as if it has forgotten how to move. Yesterday's sound still clings to the walls. The echo of drums, the hum of the crowd, the bright flash of colour under the striped awnings. But now everything lies quiet, deflated. You rise with the others to sweep what the games left behind. Petals crushed to paste, soot clinging to marble, scraps of wax and dust that drift like ghosts. The impluvium's water looks clouded, reflecting a pale sky without depth. You dip a cup to clear the surface, watch ripples erase their own image. The empire is quiet this morning, but not peaceful. Quiet the way a hearth is quiet after the fire has burned out, when the ash still glows faintly underneath. The mistress's voice calls from another room. The house must be restored. The senator visits tonight. Her words echo down the hall like ritual. You nod, though she cannot see you. Order returning. Spectacle finished. Structure resumes. You kneel at the shrine first, the lararium blackened by incense from the night before. The small bronze gods look weary beneath their layer of soot. You wipe them gently with a damp cloth, tracing circles until their faces return from darkness. Smoke, you realize, is memory made visible. Ash is what remains when memory cools. In the kitchen, the smell of stale wine and extinguished oil clings to the air. The cook, half asleep, grumbles about cleaning pots used for the feast. You scrub beside him, hands in warm water gone cloudy with fat and ash. When the pots gleam again, you see your face blurred in copper, as though the metal itself sighs under the weight of repetition. Outside the window, Rome stretches in muted tones. The sky carries a soft haze, the same pale dust that rose from the arena the day before. It drifts even here, miles away, settling on rooftops, on olive leaves, on every open surface like thin grey snow. The household's younger slaves hum the tune of yesterday's parade, not loudly, just a few notes looping out of habit. You find yourself humming with them before you realize it, your body remembering the rhythm even when your mind resists. The melody is built to linger. It repeats itself like a chain. A servant girl pauses in her sweeping and says softly, "Do you think they'll do it again next month?" You shrug. They always do. Rome thrives on rhythm. The games end, the ash settles, and then the next drumbeat begins. By mid-morning, sunlight seeps through lattice windows, turning floating dust into glitter. You climb a small ladder to polish the wall lamps. Each flame last night left a ring of soot above it, a quiet record of celebration. You wipe each mark with oil and cloth, stroke by stroke, until the plaster regains its color. Every task today feels doubled. You clean the same spots you cleaned before the games, as though trying to restore an idea rather than a room. Around you, life rearranges itself back into obedience. Somewhere a harp string twangs, soft and hesitant, as if testing whether sound is allowed again. You're sent to the storeroom for new linens. The shelves are bare in places where wine and grain were taken for the feast. The smell of spices lingers, cinnamon, pepper, cardamom, precious enough to weigh against gold. You run a finger through a scatter of powder on the table. It stains your skin faint red. The older slave appears beside you carrying a broom. "The city looks tired," he says. "All that cheering takes work." You smile faintly. "And the cleaning after." He laughs once, softly, then begins sweeping. Each stroke of his broom lifts a puff of dust that glows briefly in the beam of light from the doorway before fading to nothing. The mistress's youngest child wanders into the atrium, still wearing yesterday's festival garland, now wilted. She kneels by the impluvium, watching the petals float. "Mother says the gods love beauty," she says. You nod, unsure if she expects an answer. "Do you think they get tired of watching?" she asks. Her voice is small, curious. You almost reply yes, but catch yourself. "The gods never tire," you say instead. She seems satisfied, though you can see her reflection frown in the water. Children sense truths that adults have polished away. The senator's visit brings the afternoon to life again. Servants rush. Fabrics are shaken. Incense lit. You carry trays through air thick with perfume. The mistress rehearses her smile in a bronze mirror. The senator praises the games, speaks of the emperor's generosity, his wisdom, his divine favor. The words tumble like coins from his mouth, bright and hollow. You serve in silence, counting each sentence by the tilt of his cup. The mistress laughs at every pause. The senator does not see you. None of them ever do. You are the rhythm that keeps their music in time. When they move to the triclinium for dinner, you and another servant stand behind the couch, ready to refill wine and remove plates. Candles flicker against painted walls where myths unfold, heroes crowned, monsters slain, gods bestowing light. You know the stories by heart. Every wall in Rome tells them, as if repetition could turn myth into truth. Between courses, you look down at your hands. They smell of smoke and honey, oil and salt. Everything in this house is made from those elements. Fire, sweetness, effort and tears. The dinner stretches long into dusk. The sky outside darkens to bruised purple. Lamps are lit again one by one, each small flame rising against shadow. The mistress gestures for music, and a lyre begins to play a tune both mournful and ornate. You stand still, watching the guests sway slightly with the rhythm, their faces soft in the amber light. The sound fills the house but doesn't reach your chest. You realize that after so much noise, even beauty feels heavy. Later, when the senator leaves, the house exhales. The mistress's smile vanishes. Her shoulders drop. She orders the remaining lamps extinguished, except the one at the shrine. You wait until the last guest's sandals fade down the corridor before beginning to clean again, collecting crumbs, folding cloths, closing shutters. In the quiet, every sound seems amplified. The creak of rope, the faint crackle of dying wicks, your own breathing. The night's stillness feels earned, like a reward you're not allowed to keep. In the garden, the older slave burns refuse from the feast. Vine leaves, broken cups, scraps of fabric too stained to reuse. The smoke curls upward, pale and fragrant, joining the city's haze. You stand beside him, watching the ash drift higher until it dissolves into stars. He says, "Every fire ends this way, even Rome's." You glance toward him. Startled, he smiles. "Don't worry, not yet." Then he tosses another handful of leaves into the flame. The sparks rise like insects. You feel their warmth on your face before they vanish. The sky above the garden shifts toward deep indigo. The fountain's trickle sounds louder in the cooling air. Somewhere a dog barks, a gate creaks, and then the world folds into stillness. You gather the ashes when the fire dies, placing them in a clay bowl for disposal. They're surprisingly light, soft as flour, faintly warm. You think of the arena sand yesterday, how it glowed gold under sunlight, now turned to dust again. All grandeur ends in grey, yet even ash has its purpose. It feeds soil, sweetens earth, purifies water. Perhaps what remains after burning is what keeps the next fire alive. Back inside, you sprinkle a little ash over the kitchen hearth before relighting the small lamp there. The cook once told you it helps flames catch quicker. You don't know if it's true, but you do it anyway. Tradition holds the same power as faith when repeated, often enough. The lamp flares to life. Shadows stretch along the walls like tired dancers finding their final pose. You sit for a moment, letting warmth soak into your hands. They smell faintly of smoke again, yesterday's scent reborn. Midnight draws close. The family sleeps. The house sighs in its dreams. You walk the corridor to check the doors and windows, each latch a small affirmation that the world outside stays where it belongs. The ash bowl rests near the shrine now, waiting to be emptied tomorrow. You pause beside it, tracing a fingertip through the grey dust. For a heartbeat, you imagine the ash speaking back. Voices of lamps, fires, burnt offerings, forgotten words. It whispers not in language, but in temperature. Warmth, fading, then gone. You exhale. Your breath stirs the powder into a tiny cloud that glitters, then settles again. You lie down on your mat. Through the small window, Rome glows faintly orange, as if the city itself smoulders in its sleep. Somewhere, another household celebrates something new. Somewhere else, another servant cleans away the evidence. The cycle continues, the empire breathing through ash and noise, order and silence. Your eyes close. Inside your eyelids, the day replays, the roar of the crowd, the sweep of the broom, the curling smoke. It all blends into one long rhythm, the heartbeat of Rome, heavy and endless. In the dream that follows, you walk through an empty amphitheater. The sand is white, the sky slate blue. Each step raises a puff of dust that swirls into shapes, faces, hands, banners, vanishing before you can name them. At the center of the arena, a single lamp burns, steady and small. You kneel, shielding it from the wind. When you wake, the air smells of oil. For a moment, you can't tell if the dream flame was real. Then you see the faint glow from the shrine at the end of the hall, and realize it doesn't matter. Whether dream or duty, the act is the same. Keep the light alive. Before dawn, you rise to check the courtyard again. The ash bowl is cool now, its surface smooth. You carry it to the garden and scatter its contents among the herbs, thyme, basil, rosemary. The powder blends with soil, disappearing instantly. The air smells fresh, clean, almost sweet. The horizon brightens. Birds begin their small debates about morning. You stand there, hands grey with residue, and watch light return to the marble columns. The empire awakens again, ready to rebuild its illusions. Back in the atrium, the first sunbeam touches the shrine. The bronze gods gleam gold again, polished and patient. You bow once, not in worship but in acknowledgement, an understanding between one keeper of fire and another. Around you, footsteps begin, orders rise, the day takes shape. The noise returns, but now it feels lighter, cleaner, as if the ash carried away something heavier than dust. Perhaps that's why people burn offerings, not for gods but for the relief of starting again from what remains. The mistress crosses the atrium, freshly dressed. She nods at your work. The senator was pleased, she says. Rome notices those who maintain order. You lower your gaze and answer. Yes, Domina. She leaves the room satisfied. When she's gone, you whisper to yourself. Rome notices nothing but its own reflection. The words are quiet, swallowed by marble, but they exist. A thought is a spark, and sparks, however small, travel. By full morning the villa hums again with routine. The smell of bread returns. The fountains murmur. You carry laundry to the terrace, hang linens that flutter like pale sails. The city below stirs into motion, its haze rising like smoke. You pause, looking at your hands, clean now but still shadowed with grey in the creases. Ash, you think, never truly leaves. It just learns how to settle. Maybe that's what survival is, learning to live as what remains after the fire. You smile faintly, feeling sunlight warm your face. The empire continues. So do you. Summer arrives without warning, not with blossoms or birds, but with weight. Heat pressing down until even the air feels solid. The fountains slow to a trickle, their edges turning green. The sky loses its blue, bleaching to the color of old marble. Inside the villa, everything slows. Nintir as Aisnul Setu, voices lower, movements soften. Even the masters seem subdued. The mistress carries a fan everywhere now. The master speaks of nothing but dust, taxes, and sleep. You move through the house in sandals that stick to the floor, breathing in air that tastes faintly of copper and lime. Rome is melting in slow motion. At first the heat seems bearable. You adapt, soak cloth in water, tie it around your neck, work slower. The older slaves teach you tricks, how to cool the wine jars in the cistern, how to breathe through linen when the air grows thick with smoke. But then the days stretch longer, each one repeating the same light, the same silence. Shade becomes currency. The marble floors burn the soles of your feet. Outside, birds vanish. You can feel the city contracting, sounds muffled, people retreating indoors, streets shimmering with emptiness. The mistress blames the heat for her headaches. The master blames the gods for his losses. The steward blames the slaves for moving too slowly. Everyone looks for someone to carry the weight of the weather. You learn to keep your eyes low, your voice lower. One evening, thunder rumbles beyond the hills but no rain falls. Instead, dust drifts from the sky like pale snow. The older slave watches it settle on the fountain's surface and mutters, "Ash again, always ash." By the second week, water must be rationed. The wells taste of iron. The mistress orders the garden fountains shut off. Only the household shrine still burns its lamp, a single flicker of defiance against the heat. You polish it every morning, careful not to spill a drop of oil. Each night the horizon glows faintly. Fires burning in poorer quarters where trash and hope both turn to smoke. The wind carries the scent of roasting grain and charred wood. You dream of rain that never comes. The sickness begins in whispers. A vendor faints in the forum. A baker closes his stall. The word febri, fever, travels faster than the wind. The masters speak of bad air, of miasma rising from the river. They hang sprigs of herbs near doors and windows, as if leaves can stop a storm. When the first slave in the household falls ill, work does not stop. The steward simply orders you to move her bedding outside. The gods will sort the pure from the unclean, he says. You watch her breathing slow, her skin shining with sweat like wet marble. The gods stay silent. You begin to measure the day by temperature. Morning bearable, noon punishment, evening survival. The house smells of vinegar and oil. The cook boils water just to fill the air with steam, pretending it helps. In the city, Priests carry incense through the streets, chanting prayers to Apollo. Crowds follow them, waving smoke into alleys as though sweeping away death. From the villa balcony, you can see the haze rising, a second city made of smoke. The mistress orders another offering to the household gods. You stand beside her at the shrine, sweat dripping down your spine. She trembles as she pours wine into the flame. "He will protect us," she says, meaning her chosen deity. You nod because faith is expected, even when it feels like fever. When she leaves, you notice the bronze figures glowing faintly red from heat. For the first time they look alive, not benevolent, just awake. The older slave grows thin, his laughter disappears. He tells you one evening, when the city smells of honey and smoke, stay indoors. That's when death walks the streets, looking for conversation. You want to ask how he knows, but he's already asleep, mouth open, chest moving shallowly. At night, you dream of empty markets, of statues sweating bronze tears, of fountains filled with sand. The dreams cling to you like humidity when you wake. Midway through the month, the fever reaches the villa. The master's nephew arrives from the city pale and trembling, complaining of heat in his head. The mistress orders him a cool bath. By morning, the water has gone still around him. They carry him away in silence, wrapped in linen. No one speaks his name for a week. Afterward, every surface feels contaminated. Marble, cloth, breath. The steward sprinkles salt in doorways, muttering charms learned from a priest who charged too much. You clean the same floors 3 times, as if purity can be scrubbed into existence. You start to notice things. Cracks in the walls, flies gathering around fruit, the thinness of everyone's patience. The empire looks unchanged on the outside, but up close, it frays. The villa once smelled of olives and oil. Now it smells of fear, disguised as cleanliness. The older slave tells you quietly, when Rome starts to rot, it does so from the heat. You ask, will it end? He smiles. Everything ends, even summer. On the hottest day, the sky turns white. You can't look up without tears. The streets shimmer like molten glass. The mistress orders all lamps extinguished, all curtains drawn. The house becomes a cave of shadows. The only sound is dripping, water from the roof gutters evaporating before it hits the ground. That night, lightning strikes somewhere in the distance. You see the flash behind closed lids. You count the seconds to the thunder and lose track after 30. When rain finally comes, it is violent and brief. It hammers the tiles, fills the fountain, and vanishes before you can reach the door. But the smell it leaves, wet dust and cooling stone, makes the entire villa sigh. The mistress stands in the courtyard, hair damp, smiling for the first time in weeks. "The gods have answered," she says. You look up at the clouds already drifting away and whisper, or maybe they remembered. The fever retreats as quickly as it came, not gone, just resting. People return to the streets cautiously, as if walking on eggshells. The baker opens again. Children chase one another through puddles. Rome pretends it has forgotten. In the villa, routine resumes. Laundry, sweeping, polishing. But the servants speak softer now, as if afraid to wake something still sleeping under the floors. Even the steward has stopped shouting. You realize that fear can discipline better than any whip. At the shrine, the flame burns steady again. You refill its oil and watch the reflection ripple across the bronze gods. The older slave appears behind you, thinner but standing. "You kept it alive," he says. You nod. "That's what we do." He laughs quietly. "Maybe that's what Rome does too, keeps its fire burning, no matter how much it costs." His laughter fades into a sigh. "Let's hope it remembers why." Late that night, thunder rolls again, softer this time. You step into the courtyard and feel the first cool breeze in months. The sky smells of rain and dust, of endings and beginnings. You lift your face to the wind and close your eyes. For the first time since the games, the silence feels alive, not the silence of exhaustion, but of something waiting to grow again. In the following days, new green shoots appear in the herb garden where you scattered ash weeks ago. Tiny leaves tremble under faint dew. You kneel to touch them, warm, fragile, stubborn. You think of everything that burned incense, lamps, lives. Nothing truly gone, only changed. The mistress sees the garden and calls it a blessing. You call it memory. Rome returns to noise. Markets reopen, Musicians play, children shout. The empire breathes again, louder, as if trying to prove it cannot be silenced. Yet the laughter feels thinner, the echoes shorter. Even joy has learned caution. You watch from the balcony, feeling the sun warm but not cruel. It's the first day it doesn't hurt to stand in light. You realize that survival is not the absence of pain, it's the decision to keep polishing the world even when it keeps gathering dust. One afternoon, the master hosts a small gathering. The guests praise the weather, the emperor, the city's resilience. You pour their wine, and hear none of it. Your mind drifts to the still air of the sick room, the hiss of rain on tile, the first sprout in dry soil. The empire will record its triumph. You will remember its fever. A guest declares, Rome endures because Rome is divine. You smile faintly and think, Rome endures because we clean the ash before dawn. The older slave sits with you in the courtyard that night. The fountain runs clear again. The summer's broken, he says. Do you feel it? You nod. The air tastes different. Less of metal, more of earth. Do you think there'll be another? You ask. He chuckles. Always. But that's the blessing and the curse of this place. It burns, then rebuilds, then burns again. The fountain bubbles softly, its rhythm matching your breathing. For once, you don't feel trapped, just part of something immense and endlessly cycling. At the shrine, you light the evening lamp. The flame catches easily now, steady even in the breeze. You watch the smoke twist upward, silver against the dark. It doesn't vanish. It joins the air, invisible but present. You whisper to it, we're still here. You don't know if you mean yourself, the household, or Rome itself. Maybe all three. Night deepens. The city beyond the walls hums again, softer than before. You lie on your mat, listening to the fountain's steady voice. The heat has loosened its hold. Even the marble seems to breathe easier. You close your eyes. In your mind, the summer replays. The fever, the drought, the rain, the silence. None of it feels like punishment anymore. It feels like a long lesson taught in warmth and patience, that every empire, every life burns itself clean now and then. Sleep comes slowly, carrying the sound of wind through olive leaves. When morning arrives, the world will shimmer again, not because it has changed, but because you have learned how to see it through the haze. Autumn light slides into the house like a polite guest. The heat has loosened its grip. The garden smells of wet earth, and the fountain keeps its own soft time again. The villa is the same and not the same. A few more hairline cracks in the plaster, a few more stains rubbed thin on the mosaic, a few more grey threads in the older slave's beard. You wake with the sense that something is ending, though no one has announced it. In Rome, endings don't arrive with trumpets. They arrive the way seasons do, one leaf at a time, one lamp that suddenly takes 2 breaths to catch instead of 1. Today you're sent to the study, the triclinium. The master's voice is even, his fingers ink-stained from tallying grain and favors. On the cedar desk, 2 wax tablets lie side by side. One lists oil, wine, wages paid to a tutor, rent from a small workshop near the forum. The other lists names, not citizens' names, not clients. Names like yours, some Greek, some Punic, one from the hills the older slave once described. You don't step over the threshold. The rule holds even now. The master does not look up when he says, peculium. The word rests on the air, heavy and light. I will allow it to continue, he adds, as if discussing rain. You may keep what you earn in the extra hours. The steward has the schedule. You bow. Inside your chest, a quiet door opens onto a room you've never entered. You do not discuss this with anyone except the older slave. He listens and nods, eyes soft with a pride that refuses to show itself as hope for fear of scaring hope away. In the villa, children grow into narrow sandals and opinions. The master's eldest practices his declamations in the study, voice strong on words like virtus and gloria. The mistress tries a new perfume that smells of apples and pine. The garden's fig tree gives fruit twice, as if paying a debt. The older slave coughs more often. He says it is dust. You know it is the body's way of reminding the mind that time has accounts of its own. When you polish the bronze gods, you see your reflection beside his. two faces in one glow, one lined, one bright with fatigue. Between them stands a flame that neither owns. On a grey morning, the steward calls roll. A named voice does not answer. A young woman from the laundry has been sold. No farewell, no explanation. Only a gap in the line that makes the air tilt. Her wooden comb remains on a shelf, one tooth broken, a curl of hair still clinging to it. The mistress says, "We must be practical," and instructs you to take extra linen to the terrace. Practicality here means that stone forgets faster than flesh. You learn to fold absence into sheets, to stack it neatly in a corner where it won't trip anyone. You are sent to the market that afternoon with a message for a broker. The place smells of iron and figs. You pass the booth you never look at. Today you look, not long, just long enough to see a man standing on a box describing a woman's skills as if reciting a recipe. Her face is neither pleading nor proud. It is a door closed from the inside. You walk on, a pigeon hops between two stones and pecks at a grape skin. Rome continues. It always continues. That is its greatest cruelty and its only mercy. At night you take out your coin purse. You count the coppers. You recount. You subtract what you owe for the extra lamp oil, the borrowed needle, the scrap leather for your sandal strap. You whisper the number into the straw, as if practicing a prayer. The number is small, but it is not zero. In a life built from orders and dust, not zero is a cathedral. Winter arrives with a clean knife. The air tastes of rain and cedar. The villa's sounds sharpen, brooms on stone, the snap of a twig in the brazier, the crisp knock of the steward's tablet. With cold comes a kind of mercy. The city smells clearer, men's tempers cool, the nights lengthen enough to hold extra thoughts. On a night like that, the older slave speaks of manumission. He does not promise it, and you do not ask. He only says the word once, lightly, like a leaf settling on water. The sound it makes in the dark is enormous. Manumission is a ritual of ink and breath. It happens in a room with witnesses and a word spoken aloud that rearranges the air around a body. Sometimes it happens in a temple, sometimes in a magistrate's shadow, sometimes it happens at a table with a cup of wine and a smile both tight and tired. It always involves the master's opinion of themselves. Generosity rehearsed as drama. You imagine the act, the way a craftsman imagines a finished lid rather than the chiseling. It gleams, it fits. It opens and closes at will. Then a rumour the master may leave for a season to inspect properties by the coast. The mistress will remain. The steward will remain. The house will shift but not collapse. In the quiet before departure, the master calls you to the study again. A scrap of parchment lies on the desk, small and official. He says, "Continue as you have." He says it as if blessing a harvest that grows on its own. He does not say he notices the shine of the lamps, the way the shrine never runs dry, the absence of stains on the mosaic. He does not have to. Noticing is dangerous. Acknowledging is policy. The day the master leaves, the villa is a theatre of order, packs tied, mules shod, messages delivered. You stand in the vestibule as he passes the ancestral masks, touching one bronze cheek with two fingers. For the first time he looks directly at you. His gaze doesn't soften or harden, it simply lands. "Do not waste oil," he says. Then he is gone, leaving the smell of leather and wool and rain. The house exhales. The mistress's voice fills the space his silence carved. The steward's tablet grows heavier. You return to the shrine and adjust the wick. The flame answers without drama. Weeks pass measured by laundry lines and weather. Your peculium grows by coppers and prayers. You begin to think in thresholds. If I reach this number by spring, if I add a little more by harvest, if the lamps need fewer wicks, if the steward forgets to count a length of cord, you live inside a maze of ifs that somehow feels larger than the villa's walls. One evening, you buy a small piece of wool with your own coin. You don't need it. You keep it anyway, under the straw. Ownership, even of warmth, has a taste. The older slave grows quiet. Sometimes his hand trembles when he hands you a lamp. Sometimes he forgets a word and replaces it with another that works just as well. Once he calls you by the name of a son you've never met, and he can no longer visit except in a place thinner than sleep. You begin to polish the bronze gods more slowly. The flame flickers, as if it is learning a different rhythm. You say nothing about the tremor. Dignity here is a chain you both hold very gently. Spring returns, green threaded through cracks. The city grows loud again. Vendors competing, boatmen swearing, children inventing games with twigs and gods. In the villa, the mistress complains about a stain that refuses to leave a cushion. You work the vinegar and salt into the fabric with a patience that feels like prayer. The smell of it reminds you of cleaning wounds. Necessary, exacting, hopeful. At night, your coin purse is heavier. The number is no longer just a number. It is a line between before and after drawn in copper across the palm. A letter arrives with the master's seal. The steward reads it with his breath, not his voice. He nods, then summons you. The master returns in a fortnight, he says. He will make arrangements. The word arrangements sits between you like bread on a plate, edible, insufficient, sacred, because someone else sets it down. You polish the study. You trim the lamp outside the door. You mend the leather on the chair arm. No one notices because no one has ever had to notice. You prepare for an event without a name. The master returns thinner, browner, carrying the smell of sea wind, and accounts settled. He passes through the house slowly, touching familiar objects briefly, as if counting the bones of a friend. In the study, he sits and gestures for you to stand at the threshold. The mistress enters, and stays near the window where light makes her look younger. The steward hovers the planet holding its orbit. A freedman is a different kind of shadow in a Roman house, the master says, almost to himself. Useful, familiar, no longer owned. Then he looks at you, and something like a question crosses his eyes and leaves nothing behind. You do not speak unless spoken to. You have trained your throat to be a sealed room, but the master says your name, the one they gave you here, and then, carefully, the name you brought from the hills or the coast or the river, mispronounced but present. It enters the room like a person who has waited too long outside in the rain. He says, "You have served with diligence." The mistress nods once. The steward's tablet makes a soft sound as he presses a stylus into wax. The master continues, manumission. At the shrine tonight. The sentence holds the shape of a road. You bow. The act feels like a hinge, not a descent. The rest of the day happens the way days do even when history passes through them. Oil to the lamps, crumbs from the floor, water changed in the basin. The older slave takes your hands in his, warm and light as a moth's wing, and says nothing. His eyes are a harbour, shelter that makes departures possible. At dusk, the household stands in the atrium, lamps lit, air steady, the shrine flame a small, attentive ear. The master speaks the words required, words other mouths have said for centuries, words that are doors and bridges and sometimes tender wounds. He touches your shoulder. The gesture is neither grand nor small. The mistress lifts a lamp toward your face. For a moment you are framed by the same light the bronze gods wear without effort. Something lighter than a chain and heavier than a feather falls away and remains at your feet, like a circle drawn in dust. A document is handed to you. The letters steady themselves into meaning. Your name, the new one joined to the old. Your origin recorded as if it were a place Rome invented this morning. A figure noted that sits beside your peculium total like a friendly echo. A witness breathes. The steward scratches. The flame approves by continuing. Afterward, the villa does not change shape. The same rooms wait for cleaning. The same meals require the same rhythms. The same fountain keeps the same measures. You step into the corridor, and the marble is still cold and still beautiful, and still not yours. But your breath meets it differently now, as if both of you have agreed to acknowledge each other as equals, at least in the matter of air. You tuck the document into your tunic. You touch the coin purse. You turn to the older slave, and in that glance passes everything you cannot say without becoming someone else again. He nods. He sits. He closes his eyes, not to sleep, but to understand the sound of a chain loosening in another chest. In your corner, beneath a folded piece of wool you didn't need but kept, you place the paper. Tonight you'll keep the lamps lit a little longer, not to celebrate, not to boast, but to see the room you've lived in more clearly. The long shadow of empire still covers the world, but you have learned to carry a flame. You lie down. The fountain stitches the house to the night, thread by thread. Somewhere a cart rattles. Somewhere a singer fails to find the note and laughs. Somewhere a child wakes and forgets to cry. You close your eyes, and Rome continues. and you no longer counted as a name on the steward's tablet. Continue with it. Tomorrow you will wake, sweep, carry, repair, or you will walk to the forum under a sky that has always belonged to anyone who can breathe. Either way, you will light the lamp, and by its small stubborn circle of gold, you will read the letters that say you are a person the law can see.